So this is it, the iPhone Air. Leading up to Apple's most recent event, there were plenty of rumors and speculation about what these new iPhones would entail, as there always is, and there was one model that seemed more mysterious than maybe we're used to, something that seemed completely different and new for iPhone. And this, of course, would be the $1,000 iPhone Air, slotting between the iPhone 17 and the iPhone 17 Pro in Apple's lineup.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and there's no doubt in my mind that the iPhone Air is one of the coolest, most stunning, jaw-dropping smartphones that any company has ever made. It's mind-bogglingly thin at 5.6 millimeters.
And it looks gorgeous too, with those polished titanium sides and even that smooth and almost subtle camera bump.
Or camera plateau, whatever you want to call it. This is one heck of a smartphone, and easily the most exciting of any of the models that Apple has announced, but it's also probably the one you shouldn't buy. Today we answer the question, is the iPhone Air worth it? At $1,000 I'd say maybe, for the right user. But for the vast majority of people out there, not a shot. There's almost no practical reason to get this phone over the iPhone 17. Over the 17 Pro, sure, maybe.
It is $100 cheaper.
It's got a slightly larger display than the base 17 Pro. It's got the A19 Pro chip, and of course, it's insanely thin and cool. It's fresh, it's new, it's something different, and for some people, that might be exactly what you want. This might in fact be the future of smartphones, but available now. However, the problem with getting the future now is there's often a lot of compromise.
And sure, on the 17 Pro you get 3 camera lenses, better battery life, and a far superior cooling system. $100 more over the Air isn't nothing, but it's also not a lot when you're already spending at least $1,000 as is. But the 17 Pro doesn't have the same wow factor as the Air.
And the iPhone Air, even if it's not quite what I would consider a pro-level phone, it is going to sure stand out from the crowd. But then you also have the iPhone 17 at $800. And I've done a dedicated video on it if you want to see that, link in the description below. It's $200 cheaper, has a slightly worse non-Pro A19 chipset, and only 8GB of RAM versus 12 on the iPhone Air and the 17 Pro. But it does have an extra ultra-wide camera lens and better battery life. The 17 is a far more sensible purchase, and it's the one most customers both should and will end up making. You're not only saving money, but you're arguably getting a better phone. One with more than one speaker. Yeah, the iPhone Air only has one speaker.
The iPhone Air is so strange because it's sort of its own thing entirely, and maybe that's Apple's intention, to have it serve as a more niche, fun option for those inclined to such sorts of devices. But those compromises here are pretty substantial, to the extent that it's just not a phone I would personally want to use, no matter how thin and light it may be. Having only a single camera lens on the back is easily the most notable obvious drawback of this device, and it's a big one. While this is still a very good 48 megapixel wide lens that does give us 1 and 2 times optical zoom options, as it crops into 12 megapixels to get that telephoto zoom, missing out on having the 48 megapixel ultra wide from the 17, as well as the new 48 megapixel telephoto on the 17 Pro, well, it's gonna sting. There's a severe lack of versatility in the photography here that has this phone being more comparable to the $600 iPhone 16e than anything else. You won't find too many $1,000 flagships on the market without at least 2 or 3 camera lenses on the back. It's also worth noting, if you're one of the few dozen people out there who own the Vision Pro, the Air cannot capture spatial video due to it only having 1 camera lens. This won't matter to most people, but it is worth mentioning. At least we do get the upgraded selfie camera, and it's a pretty big upgrade too, with 18 megapixel photos now and a bunch of neat features to boot. And hey, practically speaking, so long as you have at least 1 camera on both the front and the back, you should be good to go, right? You've got your bases covered. Heck, I generally only use the main wide lens on my iPhone in most situations anyways, so I could probably live with only 1 camera on the back if I had to. I mean, I used to back in the day before my iPhone 10, but that's the thing. I could live with it if I had to, but I don't have to. And I certainly don't need to pay more for a phone that comes with such compromises. At $600, the iPhone 16e serves as Apple's budget phone, and only 1 camera there makes sense, but at $1,000, that's a tough sell for me, no matter the form factor. I heard someone say it and it really rung true. The iPhone Air puts form over function, pushing for that ultra-thin body as the top priority over everything else. And of course, the biggest concern with any small or ultra-thin phone is battery life. And according to Apple's numbers, the iPhone Air is surprisingly solid here, though the 17 and 17 Pro both outperform it handedly. Mind you, those phones are kinda beastly for battery life. Apple has done a lot here that's specifically intended to get as much battery life as possible out of the Air, despite that relatively small physical size. We've got things like the C1X modem and the N1 chip. It's specifically the Air that has these, and while we do miss out on mmWave 5G capabilities, what we gain is a whole lot of power efficiency. The iPhone 16e has the C1 chip and also has no millimeter wave compatibility, but it too has impressively decent battery life. It was far better than what the iPhone 16 had. Apple says the Air still gets 27 hours of video playback on a single charge, and that's impressive all things considered. And if I had to guess, the Air's 6.5-inch display was chosen in part because the larger size allows for at least a slightly bigger battery, plus it does add an extra incentive over the 6.3-inch iPhone 17. Maybe you want a phone that's just a touch bigger. The numbers Apple is presenting here for power performance, again, are quite impressive given how thin this phone is, and there's no space wasted on the iPhone Air, with even that camera bump being utilized to cram in all the hardware and leave more room for the battery. And yeah, the design of this phone, I mean, insane thinness aside, it's gotta be one of the most gorgeous devices Apple has ever made. Those polished titanium sides look so premium on all 4 color options, and while I would appreciate maybe a more vibrant option as well, I do think there's something to be said about these muted but incredibly classy colors. They remind me of the iPhone 5S days or something. And Apple has made it clear this phone is supposed to be shockingly durable, which would be normally a concern with a phone like this. But Apple was calling it more durable than any iPhone that's come before, and if there was any phone that I would feel wrong putting a case on, it'd be this one. Though Apple does have a couple of their own cases that looked alright. There's a really thin case and a bumper case. There's even a lanyard attachment if you want. The design is the highlight of the iPhone Air though. This is a phone for someone who wants a new, fresh, fun experience, someone who treats their smartphone not just as a tool, but perhaps even a fashion statement, or in the very least, someone excited about the tech here. You'll definitely turn some heads when you pull this phone out and people see just how thin it really is. You buy this phone if you're okay with putting form over function, and the ultra-wide and telephoto camera lenses don't matter to you. This device does still provide pro-level performance, even without all the fancy cooling features of the 17 Pro, but considering the base model 17 Pro is only $100 more, it's very difficult for me to imagine the iPhone Air being the right choice for most people who maybe want that higher tier iPhone experience, the Pro experience. But the 17 Pro is only $100 more. It is slightly smaller at 6.3 inches, but then if you want something bigger, the 17 Pro Max is significantly larger at 6.9 inches, the biggest iPhone Apple offers, and it's $200 more than the iPhone Air, which is a lot, but again, when we're talking about $1,000 plus phones, at some point those numbers don't matter as much. And all these phones do start with 256 gigabytes, even the $800 iPhone 17. Most people buying one of these phones probably have less storage coming into this, so if you think you need more storage, go for it. I think 256 is a decent size. To sum things up, the iPhone Air is great if you want something different and aren't bothered with the drawbacks that come with that beautifully slim hardware. And if you're on the fence, I'd recommend taking a look at one of these at a store. There's something about holding a device this thin in your hand that is almost surreal. And I know that because it felt that way to me using the Fold 7, which unfolded is even thinner than the iPhone Air at 4.5 millimeters, though it's a very different experience than like a slab phone, so it's not quite the same thing. But the iPhone Air, hey, it might just be the phone you've always dreamed of. But realistically, it's probably not, and I think most would prefer better battery life and photography over a thinner phone, especially if you're the type to always use a case anyways. Slightly unrelated tangent maybe, but I gotta say this, the name iPhone Air does quite annoy me. Instead of like iPhone 17 Air, as was rumored, Apple just simplified their naming scheme for their operating systems by numbering them after the year. But now you've got just a completely separate iPhone Air from the 17 Pro. This isn't fully unprecedented. Apple does have a fully separate line of iPad Airs, MacBook Airs, so maybe it makes sense to get an iPhone Air in a certain sense, but this is gonna get confusing very quickly if Apple makes a new generation of these phones every year. Next year, it's what, the iPhone Air 2 and the iPhone 18? Imagine like 5 years down the line. And sure, Apple's lineup could look very different by then, it probably will. But the 11 Pro came out like 6 years ago, and iPhones are still following the same release pattern today. Or perhaps the iPhone Air is a one-off, or we'll see a few more generations until Apple's other iPhones get just as thin and it becomes redundant. But who knows? This phone is absolutely unique, and probably the boldest phone Apple has made since like the iPhone 10, though I'm skeptical it'll be quite as successful as that phone was. Ultimately, I can't in good faith state that I believe the iPhone Air is worth buying for most people. What makes this potentially the right phone for you comes down to whether or not you personally want it. And be really sure that you want this phone, that you want it so much that you're willing to give up better battery life and a more robust camera system for $200 less than the iPhone 17. Or, of course, you could get the best Apple has to offer for only $100 more with the 17 Pro. It's a tough call. The gain with this phone comes purely in the design, and it all makes for a really strange iPhone, but also a really dang cool one. And while it isn't the right choice for me personally, just as I don't think it will be for probably like 90% of us, it is still one heck of a device, and there's a part of me that can't help but just want it, single camera lens or not. But if you want the objective answer, no, the iPhone Air probably isn't worth buying, the value just isn't there. I do really appreciate that Apple is trying something different though, it's pretty rare for them to experiment like this. Can't complain about that, especially when the iPhone 17 and 17 Pro both feel like solid upgrades at a relatively fair price. But what do you think of the iPhone Air? Does it live up to the hype? Are any of you planning on getting it? And if not, do you ever see yourself purchasing a super thin phone like this? Make sure you let me know in the comments down below.
So the iPhone Air, it's really cool, but not for me personally, and probably not for you, with a big asterisk there because some people will want it, and that's totally fine. If you want to spend your money on the iPhone Air, go for it. It's a really cool looking phone, and you're definitely gonna turn some heads when you pull it out. It's the one phone I would risk going caseless for. It is that gorgeous. But that's about it for me, so if you found this video interesting or helpful, please hit that like button and consider subscribing for more content just like this. Again, I've done a video on the iPhone 17, and I have one planned for the iPhone 17 Pro, so stay tuned for that. Links to stuff like that in the description, as well as a link to our Discord community server, which great crowd over there. I was watching the Apple event with them and it was a ton of fun. Huge shout out to the channel members. Thank you guys so much for your support. And thank you all for watching. I'm Josh from 91 Tech, and I will see you all next time.